וימדד שני חבלים להמית, ומלוא החבל החיות, ותהי מואב לדוד לעבדים נושאי מנחה. If we stop after the first two psukim, we're learning about the beginning of a war campaign. Again, we don't know if it's in this order, and it's unlikely that really comes place after chapter 7. That's for another shur why to explain. These wars are at another time. But if we identify the first war, it's unlike other wars of the Plishtim. In other wars of the Plishtim, do you remember who was invading who? Plishtim invaded Israel. In fact, David was about to be part of their team. But thank God he was relieved by the king. Second, a war against Moab. Why? Why is Israel going to war against Moab? Isn't it
revenge?
Oh, we'll get to that. Very nice point that you're saying. Very nice. That's what several sources say. Why are you going to fight them? Furthermore, is there a or not a halachic problem going to war both against Plishtim and against Moab? We'll try to point that out. And it seems that David is very harsh. Okay, and he uses a measuring stick of which prisoners to kill, which prisoners to leave alive, and the others he takes as servants. Why are these harsh statements being made about David? Let's go on. Pasuk Gimel. Vayach David et Hadadezer ben Rechov, melech Tzova, belechto lashiv yado b'nehar Adonai. It seems, I'm sorry, b'nehar Prat, thank you. Wow, what a mistake. Thank you. It seems that David now is traveling in a different direction. If beforehand his attack was against the Plishtim, we all know the Plishtim are where on the map? To Eretz Moab. Where is Eretz Moab? You can see on the other side of Yam HaMelech. You see where Yam HaMelech, the Dead Sea, is. So Moab is on the other side. So it seems that he's going from southwest to southeast, one opposite the other. This is southwest, this is southeast. And now he's going to the king of Tzova. Where is Tzova? And he's on his way to the Nahar Prat. Well, if you can identify the Nahar Prat here or not, okay, here is the Prat. Do you see? It's in Turkey somewhere today, between Turkey and Iraq. Do you see it? The Prat, the Euphrates. He's on his way to go up to the Euphrates River, and on the way, he's meeting up with the kingdom of Tzova. Now, Tzova belongs to two Arams. Actually, let's say the following. There are two Aram. There is Aram Damascus, which is Damascus, close to the Golan of today. And further north and northeast, we have Aram Tzova. That's even a greater kingdom with larger area. And it seems that David is about to attack him, the king, and his kingdom called Hadadezer, the king of Tzova. And we know that Tzova is from Syria going up to the Euphrates, as it states here. Why? Why is David interested in gaining so much land and attacking these people? Let's keep on reading. Pasuk Daled, verse 4. Pasuk Daled. The results of this war. Vayilkod David mimenu elef ushva meot parashim. 1,700 horse riders David conquers. That must be a large army, because then a horse rider on top of a wagon, okay? Actually, they're not. Are they necessarily? No. They're cavalry. They're cavalry, 1,700, and then he captures Esrim Elef Ishragli. Of infantry forces, 20,000. The numbers here, even if you wanted to say that they are a little exaggerated, They're outstanding in number. That means there's a total victory here for David and Israel in this war. What is the Tanakh coming to tell us? Why is he attacking there? Not only that, but what does David do to the chariots? Vaya'aker David et kol harechev. The chariots that he does conquer, he puts them out of commission. As if he is not making them able to be ridden by horses. Could it be that David had intention of taking it into captivity and using it in his army? If that's the case, he has a problem. Because the Torah teaches us in the section of Kings, there are certain violations or prohibitions Melech Yisrael is not allowed to do. One of them is Lo Yarbelo Susim. The Torah says in Deuteronomy chapter 11, Lo Yarbelo Susim, you're not allowed to have a multiple number of horses. When we study that subject, we ask ourselves why. Isn't it important that the king has a large army? Without a doubt. The question is, until what amount? When you have so many horses, and they're not even for use, then you could begin giving your security, your faith, and your military strength in your army, and take away your security and trust in Hashem. That could be one of the prohibitions that the king is not allowed to have so many horses. So what does David do? He maims the chariots to make sure he's not going to use the horses with the chariots. How many does he leave over? Vayoter mimenu mea rechev. He leaves for himself 100 chariots. And Rashi says here that it's for his cavalry, it's for his chariots, for his army. He needs this amount, but no more. So if he took 1,700, the numbers really of the horses are told to us, right? 1,700. It could be that there are 1,700 with chariots, and he destroys, almost maims them, leaving only 100 chariots for use. Where does David travel from this northeastern area of Aram Tzova, which goes all the way up to the Prat? Notice there's a country northeast of Aram Tzova. It too is called Aram. What is it called on the map? Aram Naharaim. There should be another yud there. I don't know why not. Aram Naharaim. Do you remember we read about Aram Naharaim? Who comes from Aram Naharaim? Lavan, the family, Rivka, Avram, right? Avram Avinu also is born in this area. So, is there a prohibition? He's born, so he comes from all this area, or Kazdim, Haran. Isn't there a halachic problem going up to war against Aram Naharaim, who made a brit, who made a covenant with Yaakov Avinu? Now, first I'm asking, we'll talk about Moab in a moment. Was there or not a covenant between descendants of Am Yisrael and Aram Naharaim? Remember who ran after who? Lavan ran after Yaakov Avinu. And then they made peace. We won't cross this area and go to war against you. You won't cross this area and go to war against me. And that was made in the Giladi Mountains, okay, on the other side of the Jordan River. And here we see clearly David going up to Aram Tzova, going up to en route to the Euphrates River. So again, we're asking what is going on. Furthermore, Pasuk Hey, Vatavo Aram Damesek La'azor La'adad Ezer Melech Tzova. Here we see an international treaty. Who's coming to help who? Aram Damesek is going further up north to help out who? Not David. He's going up to help out the king of Tzova. So we have Aram Damesek, Aram Tzova getting together. it would seem that the number of troops of the enemy of Israel would outnumber Israel by a lot. We're in the middle of Pasuk 5. Follow the Hebrew. Vayach David ba'aram. Wow. Esrim ushnayim elef ish. What a total victory. 22,000 forces are knocked out.
Why is he going to war against...
All these are legitimate questions. We're asking all these questions. We're going to get to an answer shortly. Pasuk Vav, let's read just a little more. Vayasem David nitzivim ba'aram Damasek. David now makes clerks. He now appoints governors, clerks in Aram Damasek. What do you think they're there for? Tax collection. If David is controlling the area, he's creating like satellite states. He's doing colonialization. He is taking rule over the area. And how does he administer the area? By appointing his own governors. And they're there in order to collect taxes. So where does he put them? Let's read it. Vayasem David nitzivim b'Aram Damasek, in Aram Damascus. Vati Aram le David, Aram as if belongs to David. Lavadim as servants, nosei mincha, and they often bring gifts to him. And then we have an unusual pasuk out of the blue. May I ask? Vayosha Hashem et David bechol asher halach. It seems that, right, and salvation. We're used to seeing psukim of salvation only when there's a great danger. Here, we don't learn about the great dangers. Here, we don't see them. We see one short phrase that God saved David everywhere where he went. If we would open up Perek Samich of Psalms, of Tehillim, and other sources, we would learn how David shares with us the dangers he was in these wars. We'll get to do that, by the way. There in Perek Samich, David will share with us some of the dangers. Also, Pei Gimel, if you just wanted a taste of it. In Pei Gimel, chapter 83 of Psalms, David says the following: Ki no'atzu leiv yachdav, alecha brit yichrot. They decided to take counsel together against you, against God. And they established a brit. Who is David talking about? The next pasuk, in verse 7, Ohalei Edom, the tents of Edom, v'yishme'elim, Moab v'agrim. They too made a treaty to go up against Israel. Pasuk Chet, Gavul ve'amon ve'amalek paleshet im yoshvei tzur. There are international treaties. Tzur is Tyre. Paleshet are the Plishtim. Amalek is usually in the Negev. Ammon is next to Moab. Verse Tet. Gamashur nilva imam. Assyria. Ashur is Assyria, where the areas of Aram Tzova are. Okay? Hayuz roa livnei lot sela. Ashur was the arm of the children of Lot. Who are the nations of the children of Lot? Moab and Ammon. So we see that Assyria is coming from a distance of hundreds of kilometers, making a treaty with Ammon and Moab. So when King David writes this in Psalms 83, and there are other Psalms, in chapter 60 in Samich, we learn about something that we don't know here. And that is, these nations are coming together, joining arms, as we say, to fight up against David. That could explain what the Torah says here, what the Tanakh says here in verse 6. Who brought salvation to David? Hashem did. Why is salvation stated? Because David was in great danger. One more pasuk, and then I want to put some things together. Pasuk Zayin, verse 7. Vaikach David et shiltei hazahav. What is David taking into captivity? Shiltei Zahav. Shiltei Zahav are shields. Okay? King Solomon in Shir HaShirim writes about Shiltei Giborim. Shiltei Giborim, some of you Sfardis, you recite Shir HaShirim before Shabbos. At least that's part of the custom. And there we learn about the shields of the courageous. So Shiltei Azav are the golden shields that he's taken into captivity from who? Asherayu El Avdei Hadadezer, the servants of Hadadezer. We said Hadadezer is the king of Melech Tzova, okay, which is in the northeast of Damascus and maybe of the Turkey area of today. Vayiviem Yerushalayim. Wow. Why? And we're stopping now. What's going on with all this happening here? And our next question is, if the truth is that some of these wars took place earlier and some took place even later, thank you, then why is it written here? So let's now begin our understanding. We studied yesterday in Perek Zayin, the Perek before, David saw and understood that internationally, quiet. He's the king of Israel. The Holy Ark has been moved into Yerushalayim. There's peace. Maybe it's the time to build the Beit HaMikdash. He goes to Natan the prophet and says, something's wrong here. I have a lovely home. My home is made out of cedar wood. A Gentile king called Hiram, the king of Tyre, Tzor, volunteered. He sent the workers. He sent the raw materials. I have a beautiful home here in the city of David. I'm sitting in a wonderful home, and the Holy Ark is inside a tent. It doesn't feel right. Maybe it's the time to build a Beit HaMikdash. What was Natan's answer? What was Natan's answer? Whatever your heart thinks to do, do. Natan didn't bother consulting. He's the prophet. He didn't consult Hashem. Rather, whatever you think is right to do. Now, that's the answer Natan gave David. We know David, if he gets a green light, what do you think he's doing?
Breaking everything and going.
Would you please bring 3 bulldozers over now to the Temple Mount?
Yeah.
I need 3 spotlight people. I want you to bring over cables for electricity. I need people that are digging, stone workers, jumbo trucks, yes. David is a pusher, a worker. No, David is more than a yakka. He's a pusher and a worker. That night,
Almost like a Rabbi Listman style.
that night, we learned who appears in prophecy to Natan? Hashem. What did you say then? Don't you know what David is going to be doing? Go to him right away. Hashem knows the attributes of David. If he gets a green light, boom, 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 he doesn't wait. He's a bulldozer. He couldn't do it. David was given a lengthy message by the prophet. He cannot build the temple. The Tanakh didn't specify why not. Other things are written in the book of Chronicles, Divrei Hayamim, Bet, chapter 15. And we went according to an explanation that David is not the right person in this generation. Because David's role is to fight wars and conquer Israel. Until now, David thought he conquered enough. He was told he's not going to do it. And instead of David offering to build a house for Hashem, in that long speech, Hashem offers to build a house for David. What does that mean? You're going to have a continuation. You're going to have a son that's going to be a ruler. And that will give a chain, a dynasty. And one of your sons, he will build the temple. And we look at the Perek in Divrei Hayamim in the book of Chronicles, and we know that it'll be the son that will be born to be called Shlomo, Solomon. He will build the temple. There is nothing negative here in our book of Shmuel. Why? David is not deserving. And therefore we understood with the other chapters in Chronicles, David has a job to do. And his job is to take Israel to war and free us from international enemies. David thought that he did enough work already. Maybe that's the reason why this chapter comes here. And really, Rashi, in his commentary here in this chapter, Rashi says, all these matters of war are brought here next to the section that David asked for a green light to build a holy temple, because David says, well, if I can't build the holy temple, I have to look otherwise. What has to be done? What has to be done? And do you know that from all the wars that he goes to, do you know what David does with the property? Do you know what David does with the resources? Let's read the last pasuk of this chapter, Yud Aleph, verse 11. Gamotam hikdish hamelech David ladunai im hakesef v'azahav asher hikdish mikol hagoyim asher kibesh me'aram u'mimoav u'mibnei Ammon u'miplishtim u'mi'amalek u'mishlal adad Ezra ben Rechov Melech Tzova. My dear friends, all the assets, all the wealth, the silver and gold, all of what David conquers, he puts in a bank account. He sanctifies everything. Everything will not be for me and not for my dynasty, not for my kingdom. It'll be kadosh. Kadosh for what?
For the Beit HaMikdash.
Beautiful. David right now is saying, if I can't build the Beit HaMikdash, can I find a way of capturing, overcoming enemies of Israel, winning wars with the help of God, and now financing the future Beit HaMikdash? That's in David's mind. David is Klal Yisraeli. David is not something private. He's not a private entity. He's not thinking of himself or the bank account for his inheritors. He's thinking of the nation of Israel. He's thinking of Kavod Shamayim, the honor of God. Okay, we're stopping here, and now we're going to go back and try to understand in a better way this wonderful chapter. Okay, there's no doubt that inside one chapter, don't think when we're reading this chapter that this occurs in 7 days, or this occurs in 7 weeks, or this even occurs in 7 months. It could be the course of decades. So why does the prophet Natan HaNavi incorporate all of this, the wars of Ammon, Moab, Plishtim, Amalek, Aram Tzova, Aram Damasek, Edom? Why does he incorporate all inside one chapter? That's the question. What is clear to us, that if it did extend over the course of years, as a result, Israel, the land of Israel, seems to be spreading and getting to an area called the promised borders to Avraham Avinu. Do you remember where the promised borders, where does that appear in the book of Bereshit? In which event in the book of Bereshit does Hashem promise what we call Gvulot Haftacha, the borders of promise to Avraham Avinu? It's in the famous Brit Bein Abitarim. There are two sources. The covenant of the pieces in chapter 15, where God promises these borders, what we're learning about here, that have yet to be realized. And furthermore, at Mount Sinai, Vakasha, that's all I have. In Mount Sinai, look at source number 1, because this will count from Sinai on. In Shemot chapter 23, Pasuk Lamed Aleph, verse 31, God says to the nation of Israel through Moshe Rabbeinu, V'shati et givulcha miyam suf v'ad yam plishtim umi midbar ad han nahar ki etein biyatchem et yoshevei haaretz v'gerashtamo mipanecha. I will place your border from Yam Suf. Where is Yam Suf? The Red Sea. That will be the southeastern border of Western Eretz Yisrael. Do you see it on your map? Do you see where Yam Suf is?
Eilat.
Right, at the port of Eilat. Do you see on the port of Eilat? Yam Suf. Okay? That will be the southeast border of what we call Western Eretz Israel, the western side of the Jordan River and so on and so forth. God promises that your border will be from Yam Suf to Yam Plishtim. What is Yam Plishtim?
Yom HaTichon.
The Mediterranean, very good. Umi Midbar, and from the desert, Ad HaNahar. Here's the key word. What is HaNahar, the river? Not the Mississippi. The Prat, the Euphrates. That's what Hashem promises Na'am Yisrael at Sinai.
How many times bigger is it?
1 second. This is here in Sinai. To Avram Avinu, look at source number 3. Source number 3. In Bereshit, chapter 15, where God promises Avram Avinu. Bayomahu, on that day, Karat Hashem et Avram Berit Lemor. This is the covenant that God established with Avram Avinu, saying, Lizaracha, to your seed, that's us, we. Natati, I gave, et haaretz hazot, this land, from where? Minahar Mitzrayim, from the Egyptian river. Some say that it's Vadi El Arish. There are different opinions. Does it go down to the Suez Canal or not? Is it Sinai or not? Different opinions. What is called the Egyptian river. From Nahar Mitzrayim ad to where? Ad Nahar Gadol. What is the Nahar Gadol? Nahar Prat. So here you see, to Avram Avinu, in the covenant, the Brita ben Abtarim, to Am Yisrael at Sinai, the promised borders. Could it be that right now, David, his motivation, his objective, is to now realize that if I can't be the builder of the Beit HaMikdash, I want to perform something so holy nationwide, so holy as far as realization of God's promise to Avram Avinu and the nation of Israel. He wants to realize conquering the promised land. Okay? What did you find?
Is it this one?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Not Kunin Quina. We're not talking about Kuwait.
Like this. It's too big. Like this?
So there are different opinions. What is that including? Now,
Is this part of Israel?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Maybe it's a little bit half of that. But which is already very big.
Gentlemen, number 2. We have a problem we have to ask. When David maims chariots and horses, he's cutting off the tendons, okay, that connect between the hoof of the horses and the knee joint. Why? Why is he doing that? You have to ask that question. Further, that's what it says. Furthermore, when he takes booty, we notice that what is he doing with the booty? He is sanctifying it to God, to the future building of the Beit HaMikdash. Now, you should know all the details of these wars are not written here. Some we learn about in Psalms and Tehillim. Some we learn about Divrei Yamim in the Book of Chronicles. Okay? You should know the fact that we just said before that God saved David. That means all these wars were not glut. They were not smooth. They were problems, difficulties. They were ups and downs. And here in this chapter, the prophet is only describing the general idea. That's what Rav Ariel, one of the great Tanakh teachers from the Golan, that's how he explains. And let's go back to the beginning. The Perek opened up with the words, Vayihi achrechen. It was afterwards. After what? The negative answer that David cannot build the Beit HaMikdash. Okay? The time of ultimate rest has not arrived. Maybe that's the reason it's brought here. David understands from God's reply to Natan that if the time hasn't arrived, the famous pasuk in the book of Devarim, which I didn't bring here, that eventually we'll get to minucha v'nachala. The word minucha, which means rest, refers to the tabernacle in Shiloh. Nachala, which refers to inheritance, refers to the ultimate building of a Beit HaMikdash. It could mean that David understands that we've not arrived to that time. If we've not arrived to that time, David says, what I'm going to do is turn my attention, my energies, my resources to strengthening the kingdom of Israel from 2 points. Security-wise, because there are enemies out there, and nationwide. We're going to build a greater kingdom of Israel. And now, in order to do so, David has several problems that are not described here, but we learn from the Tanakh. Usually, we learn about the army of Israel, which today, for instance, what is the official name of the army of Israel? What is it called?
IDF.
Why is it called IDF?
It's all defense.
Why defense?
We don't attack.
Oh, we're defending ourselves. Until now, we realize that David, usually against the nations mentioned here, would only be able to go to war in defense if they attacked. Okay? But we notice that these wars are not wars of defense. Rather, these are wars that David initiates to go against them. Now, if we really learn the Torah well, each of the nations mentioned here, Plishtim, Aram, Ammon, Moab, and Edom, we have a halachic problem to go to war against them. Do you know why? Let's take an example first with the Plishtim. Who made a brit with the Plishtim? Avram Avinu, Yitzchak Avinu, even maybe Yaakov, some say. And who made the brit with Aram, you just mentioned before? Who made the treaty with Aram? Yaakov Avinu with Lavan. All these are treaties, britot, not to go to war. Now, what can you tell me about a second grouping? Ammon, Moab, Edom. What halachically is the matter? Can we go to war to them or not go to war to them?
Can you break a break?
What is made what are we told in the Torah regarding the nation of Ammon and Moab?
It says that we should leave them alone.
We should leave them alone. Don't go and take their land. Why? Because they're relatives of Avram Avinu. Ammon and Moab are the children of Lot. Edom.
The children of Abraham.
The brother from Edom comes, Esav comes Edom. So in each 3 cases, Ammon, Moab, and Edom, the Torah prohibits to go to war against them. They have a right from the Torah, because they're close relatives to Avraham Avinu, to have their own national land. Okay? So how do we deal with these matters? Yes, sir?
Didn't David HaMelech usually go to the Urim and Turim or Nevi'im when it came for permission to go to war or something?
You're right. So before we begin answering each one, yes?
So I would like to give an answer.
Yes.
So the Torah actually forbids to eradicate the population and to conquer it completely.
Do you know what provocatia means? Provocatia. It says regarding some of them, al titgarubam, don't be provocative and make a war. Like I bought this guy over there. I'm provocating.
Said, okay, but could be
You can be back.
could be that David then also reacted on provocation of them.
Okay.
And another thing is he didn't conquer completely. He didn't kill the whole population, but rather he subjugated them and made them pay tribute.
Okay. So we're going to get to begin understanding. First, we have to put in our perspective. There's a concept called a dream. David is a dreamer and a doer. He knows that in the future, there's going to be not only a land of 7 nations. What is the land of 7 nations? The Canaan. Have you heard the term of Aratzot Aseret Amim? What, have you heard the term the lands of 10 nations?
3 Ks.
And they are?
Knani.
No.
Kneedim.
All right. So the 7 Canaanite nations plus Ammon, Moab, and Edom. David has a dream. Will he or not be able not only to conquer Israel proper, but also what's called the lands of 10 nations? Apparently, over the generations, this dream is now in the mind of David HaMelech. Okay? Now, it's reasonable to say what David began saying, that each of these nations that the Torah says, no, don't be provocative to them, it's reasonable to say that they were provocative to us, and they instigated clashes or wars with us in the past, and by being provocative and doing a war against us, they're basically breaking. What are they breaking? The covenant, the Brit, the treaty. Okay? Certainly, we're going to be seeing this regarding the Plishtim. That's the easiest thing to see. Because in the Sefer Shmuel, who infiltrated into the Shomron and destroyed the Mishkan in Shiloh? Plishtim. Who attacked Shimshon HaGibor in the period of the Shoftim? The Plishtim. So we have several accounts where the Plishtim are not keeping their ancestors' words. Okay? So it's not a hard halachic answer why David is on the offense, initiating a war. He wants to conquer the areas of Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gat, and the Gaza Strip. Yes?
They attacked us, but then they have broken the brit, right? Forever. So you can attack them there.
That's correct. That'll be the halachic answer. What will qualify halachically that they won't have a claim against us internationally. Yes. Okay. Tov, I think we'll stop here and learn some Hilchot Shabbat. Shalom Chazak.